I'm Raveen Sethi, I'm 24 years old and I'll be speaking about fertility. I got diagnosed with cancer at the age of 23. It was a blood cancer, Hodgkin's lymphoma. I was stage 4 and I was told to decide whether or not I wanted to freeze my eggs. And I found that quite a challenging decision. And then 3 months ago, I relapsed, so the cancer came back. And because the chemotherapy would be harsher, I then had to reevaluate if I wanted to freeze my eggs, and I did. And when I look back at why the decisions were so hard, it made me think about the issue of fertility, why it was important to me, and what it meant for people around me, including my future partner. I find that it's very hard, and there's not many conversations surrounding this topic. In our community, I think particularly in the older generation, they can be insensitive to the topic, and they often do badger women mostly about having children. But there is a lot more to it, and it is quite a personal and private issue. But yeah, I feel like because it's such a personal issue, we as women get influenced by societal views and what we should be doing. I think it should be spoken about in school, because in biology, basic biology, but also maybe it will be happening, but with our generation as girls talking about whether you want to have kids or if you don't, just making it a normal topic, because even if we don't want kids now, it's still something that's going to crop up in the future. And until I got diagnosed, I never thought about the topic. And then it made me stop and think, like, I love my nieces and nephews, I really want this. But never before that had I ever realised how much I wanted children and how much I'm putting at risk. But I think for our society, it's important to talk about the issue amongst men and women, because it's something that happens amongst both genders. But in our heads, the next step, for an Asian woman especially, it's get your education, get a job, get married, and then have children. That seems to be the way to complete your family, by having children. That's the next general step. And it made me think, in our parents' generation, that was probably just the next step. They didn't have time to think. And if we then asked them at that time if they wanted children, if they were ready, would they actually be ready? But I think it's still a bit of a taboo subject if you can't have kids, because people just assume for you to have kids. I think whilst I was assessing why I should or should not freeze my eggs, I think it came down to education, because I understood that there are loads of different options these days. There's adoption, there's like surrogacy, there's IVF, there's loads of different options that I can explore if I really wanted it. And my mum always reminds me that if I really want it, like, God will make it work for me some way or another. And I think it's important to be, I never realised until that point how important it is to discuss fertility, not just when you're 30, 31, when you're actually settling down, but just to explore the different options. And I've just started to see everything in a different perspective. Indian women are associated with being a mother, that is their identity. So I think if you strip them of that identity, they are much more than that. I feel like women in our culture, again, they're just always associated with another person, whether it's a baby, whether it's a man, to get the title of a wife or a mother. And I think there is a lot more to it, which we're now understanding as time goes on, and as women are choosing to be more than just that. We're expected to be mothers. We're always told that mothers are like, they're maternal, they're meant to have babies for that different love. And when that doesn't happen, that creates so much disappointment for a woman, especially if they're suffering from other medical conditions that aren't allowing them. It's a lot to take on. They end up feeling like a failure. As I've relapsed, I'm a lot more scared than I was before last year, because I feel like because I hear about stories where people have lost their lives, so those dark thoughts often come to me, and I don't always want to speak to my family about it because I don't want to worry them. And they have to be positive, but I find it very hard to manage those thoughts, because I think we often hear about people with cancer dying. That's what we associate cancer with. And especially as a young individual, I'm like, I want to do all these things. I want to experience life. I want to be there for my nieces and nephews. So I found that very challenging, and I still do, to deal with, because I feel like I'm very close. I'm closer to death than the average person. I think it is a lack of education. No one understands what a stem cell transplant is. And also, I think people are lazy. They're generally lazy. There's not much that's entailed. You just need to swab. It's literally, you can get it through the post, but people are lazy these days. I think that's what it is. It's a lack of education and just not making the effort, because DKMS, there's like loads of different organisations, and they actually go to like temples, they do rounds, and it's very readily available, and you hear about it on social media and people share it. And I think I've shared a few posts, and I've told my family, like, do this, like thinking that they'd be more inclined to, because I've been through cancer. But I just feel like people don't care unless it's come to their doorstep, which is very sad, because so many people are losing their lives. And all they need is a donor, and it's not that hard to do at all. Where I'm a young South Asian girl that's going through cancer at a young age, because in our community we expect it to be older people that suffer from cancer. So I feel like I have that responsibility, and because I understand how it feels, and I don't want other people to feel the same way, to feel isolated or to not know what to do in those situations, because a lot of people don't have the same support that I've had with my family. So I want to be able to educate, I want to be able to be a helping hand for anyone that's going through cancer. And I've also looked into different areas and different challenges that I face, such as the career gap, the fact that I can't work during this period, and what it does to your mental health. And it makes me think about what I can and should be doing for the next few years, and what I should be putting my energy into, because I feel like it's a lot more purposeful than ever before, because not only have I had cancer once, I'm now going through it for the second time. And you mostly hear about white people that do have cancer. We're in the UK, that's expected. But at the same time, I never thought I'd be in this position where I'd have cancer. So now I feel like it's important to educate yourself with things that you're not necessarily a part of, just for education's sake, because you never know, it could be helpful to someone. So it would be helpful, because the problem I had was I was thinking about what everyone else would think, what my partner would think, what my family would think, but I forgot about myself in the process. So I think when you go through something like cancer, it's a huge thing, and hopefully your family are supporting you. They understand what your body's been through, what your body's constantly going through. So I think it's important to realise that you are a lot more than cancer. I made a point not to let cancer define me. I also wanted to raise awareness and make that a big part, but that's not me. Me and cancer are very separate. So the person that you're going to be with is going to be with you for you, and that's what you need to understand. It's very easy to be like, oh, like, why would I want to be with someone that has cancer? And I always think that myself, why would someone want to be with me? Because what if I pass away in the next few years? Like, that's a very big burden. But I think it's very important to just be a lot more kinder to yourself. Like, you have not put this disease upon yourself, it's fine. And just to trust the process. Yeah, just understand that you're way more than your cancer.